Hey guys, Pablo here, and today on the path of art we're going to try to do something a little bit different than what we've done so far. So, contrary to what it may seem like to you from my first two videos, I do not claim to have all the answers. However, I have quite a few answers, but what I mostly have is good questions. And the whole idea of this series of videos that I'll be starting hereby with this one is so that we can study together. Now, let me show you what I mean. Um, Here's the ArtStation page of Greg Danton. He's one of my favorite artists from ArtStation, and really, I don't know a whole lot about this guy's biography, but it's enough for me just to see just to see some of his paintings and to be like, whoa, this guy knows what's up. He definitely knows what's up. And so, what I usually do in the morning, like first 2 hours after waking up, is I take, and by all means, I recommend all of you do this because this is the number one way to incorporate new skills and to kind of get to do different stuff than what you usually do. So, if you wish to acquire a new skill or to get better at a particular skill you might already possess, uh, the obvious thing to do is to study the greats. And one of the greats of today is Greg Danton, in my humble opinion. So, how do we do this? Now, this is why I'm here. Most people get this very wrong, and they think that studying is okay, I'll take this work by Greg and I'll copy this. And that's bullshit. I mean, it's not bullshit if you're an absolute beginner, but if you possess any considerable level of skill, like merely copying this won't get you very far. So, what I propose to you instead is that we actually take the time to analyze why Greg's paintings look so good. And off the bat, I'll save us all some time because I was trying to film this yesterday and something got fucked up with my file storage and stuff, so I didn't manage to film it, but all the analysis of what's going on are still in my head and they're pretty fresh. So the thing that Greg does, I mean, there's a lot of things he does well. And now, granted, a lot of these are pre-production concept art, so they're not as polished as you might expect. But I'm not going to go too much into detail on that idea because some idiot might think that I'm bashing on the guy, and I have no right to bash on someone of this level of skill. So let's just skip that whole ordeal and get to the thing that Greg does really, really well and that make his paintings stand out. Um, and the first thing that comes to mind, as far as this goes, is just look at how sharp the contrasts are. Look at this one, for example. Uh, I mean, there's like you can cut the line between the light and the dark in every painting. Well, most of them at least. Uh, yeah, take a look at this. So there's like a very distinct light surface versus dark surface. Here too, you can see how uh, there's like a lot of dark shit in the foreground, and then as you go back, there's like these huge columns hanging from the sky, and well, since the light source is coming from the left, we have some sort of god rays or something, so the geometry is clearly cut between light and dark surfaces. Now this is a bit darker, but let's see. Yeah, this is like super pre-production. Never mind. Yeah, take a look at this one. I mean, you'll this kind of a high contrast situation works really well and draws your eyes exactly where he wants them to be. Now, if you look at this, I mean, really, it's not even hard to imagine this in black and white and not losing a lot of information. Of course, he adds flavor and appeal with colors and subtle halftones and stuff, but really, it's the most simple stuff that works. And this is usually done in the first stages of painting. Usually, I mean, at least when I paint, and I have no reason to assume that other people do something dramatically different in this regard, but like the first distinction I try to make when I put my brush on the canvas or digital canvas, what have you, is I try to differentiate light from the shadow. That's like step number one. And this is a really good example of how if you fuck up the step number one, all the subsequent steps don't make up for it. So the closer to the beginning of the painting you are, the more crucial that phase is. So you can fuck up the highlight in the eye all you want if your values are good and if you've divided light and shadow well at the beginning, your painting is still going to hold ground, at least somewhat, or hold water. Yeah. And if you haven't done that, then no amount of eyelash level details is going to save your painting from looking like absolute crap. So there's quite a couple of... Take a look at this. I mean, oh my god. Like, this level of control, and besides the foreground character, this guy with the gun, all of this, like, robo monster freaks are... they're all basically packed, besides the two on the left, on the right, or three, all of them are packed like inside 3 or 4 values, and that's all he has, and that's all he that's all he needs, because look, I mean, I'm just amazed. I won't try to talk because I start to suck when I talk about something I'm so passionate about. Look at this. Look at how crisp the division between the shadow and the light part of his face is. It's almost a straight line. And that's because he has a flat face. So that's used to portray that. But there's a clear distinction every time. Here too. Here too. So what Greg does really well is, or rather, the thing that he does really well that we're going to study today is this clear distinction between the light and the shadow parts. Excuse my slurping coffee along the way. I haven't had a chance to finish my coffee this morning, so yeah, get used to it. I don't care. So we want to nail this light versus shadow feel, and might be things that we're going to miss on the first go, because as I said, I don't claim to have all the answers, but I have a pretty good general idea of what Greg does. Okay, so there's a particular painting that I have in mind, and that I wanted us to study. I've already done study on this one. It's this one. I prepared this one for studying, and I really like this one because it's really subtle, and if you look at it, like really the lightest value on the whole painting is this highlight here on this golden pot or something, and or maybe the highlights on the pauldron of this orc looking dude. Never mind. I mean, one of the two, but they're like not even close to white. Now this, and this is like pretty close to black, not completely black, because we can see some saturation, like some reddish tint here. Excuse me. Yeah, maybe. But it's not completely black. It's pretty dark. The other reason why I really appreciate this painting is all the background detail, like the one with the mutant robots we were talking about. There's like 5 values in the background, and everything is perfectly described with those. And even if we zoom in, like the brush strokes aren't that detailed. It's not like uh, despite what it looks like. I suppose this was done over some kind of 3D model. The way I'd go on about this is I'd probably sculpt these heads in ZBrush or something, just because it's like super fast to do if you know your way around ZBrush. You can sculpt like these humanoid-like creatures in dozens pretty fast, and then you can go from this guy and sculpt a little bit into this guy, and then just like have 5 heads, or how many are there, 7 heads in no time. I'm not sure that's what he did, but never mind. We're not like focusing on portrait anatomy. We're focusing on values primarily now, and the distinction between light and dark. And to get a closer look at that, I'm going to pull up my Photoshop, and yeah, I have this painting ready in my PureRef window. Oh, goddamn. The thing is, if you don't know what PureRef is, which, I mean, I doubt there's like a chance that you don't know what it is, but on the odd chance that you don't know, uh, just download it. And there's not a better software for reference anywhere, so thank me later and download now. And like, they're not sponsoring me or anything, it's just the guys have made an amazing piece of software. That's all there is to it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do before even starting studying is I want to see I want to get down the aspect ratio of this photo. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to copy the picture on my canvas. I'm going to increase it so that I have the width. That's right, that's perfect. Okay, let it match my canvas size. And once I have it here, really, because all I care about is, yeah, I basically just want to have its size. I don't care about any else. Now I'm missing a pixel here. OCD kicking in. Okay, never mind, that's perfect. Now this is too dark. This is perfect. Okay, but first things first, before diving in and breaking down the study of this, I want to show you something that I think is very important to understand here. And this is something that I've understood from observation mostly, and it's something that we cannot do without in this piece, and that is dynamic range. Now, I haven't really, nobody taught me dynamic range in painting until I started to get a little bit into photography, and then I started understanding dynamic range. Now, what dynamic range essentially is that, like, eyes, camera, or any sort of visual instrument can only focus really on either light or dark at the same time. So there's a trade-off between how well you see in light versus how well you see in dark. And since it's snowing pretty heavily around me right now, a really cool example I can think of is when I used to train rowing, we had our gym was basically in a cave. It was in a hole in a hill. So we would spend hours in the gym, and then after we finished our training and we wanted to go home, the moment we exited the cave, which had like no windows and no doors and no light source except for a few light bulbs, it was like really hardcore shit, but we loved it. So the moment you exit the cave, and it has like half a meter of snow outside, you're just blinded, and you're blinded for 5 minutes straight. You cannot open your eyes, and everything around you is so flashy. And the reason for that is your eyes are obviously have gotten used to working in the dark, and then once you enter such a light environment, your eyes take time to get used to, because they make much darker things look white. Because if you compare like the value of the light bulb in a cave to to the sun and the sun's reflection in the snow. Like the sun reflection in the snow is much whiter than the light bulb in the, or at least than the immediate surroundings of a light bulb inside a cave. It's not the same power, the same amount of light. And there's really, okay, I'm like philosophizing so heavily, and actually that's something I'll try to leave for other videos. The thing is, let me show you. It's much easier to show this than it is to actually explain. So you have, this is a value of 0. This is like complete black as far as Photoshop goes. Actually, let me do it on a different layer. So take yeah, okay, so this is black. Now let's go with gray 10. This is 10. Now this is 20. $30. Now don't mind my missing a straight line. 40. 50. Yeah, let's move it to the side. 50. We'll be done in no time, guys. Just hang on with me. There's a really important point to be made here, and I'll show you what it is in a second. But first we need all of these gray squares. Believe it or not, they're important for something. Now the 80 won't be as visible because it's the same value as my background, but imagine it exists. This is 90 and this is 100. Okay, so here we have like the complete value range. Now of course there would be, this would be a gradient, not like separate surfaces in real life, but this illustrates the point of what I'm trying to say much better. So the thing is, if we go back to Greg's work here, let me see. Okay, so take a look at this. Your painting is either happening in the light or in the dark. And if you're painting, like most of Greg's paintings are happening in the dark. So like the base value of this is pretty dark, and most of the stuff that's going on in this painting is happening from values like 10 or 20 to values like 50, and there's basically very little in terms of light except on this part here, which is the focal point. And then the light, most of the light stuff is happening around 90, and that's like the whole body of this bad guy, and maybe there's like some 60s here. But the thing is, we're missing out on the 40s and the 50s, and that's what makes a good contrast. Let's find another example. Yeah, take a look at this. So what separates light from the dark so well is you basically have to lose one of these squares. So if nowhere in your painting do you have these two, or three even, now take a look at this. This is dark. This is where you tell most of your story. This is light. This is like the overexposed part of your painting. Overexposed, like quote unquote, it's not like really super overexposed, but that's like that's what it looks like. Okay, so in case this was too abstract because I don't know if what I'm saying really makes sense, but let's show it in an example. The thing is, to make this, since we're like focused on the dark part of the painting, and the painting is happening in the dark, we'll be telling most of our story with the darker values. And then, like, everything that's light is going to appear overexposed and almost like cut away from the dark. And in order to achieve that, we're going to use a clear separation. Like, we're going to use sharp edges, but more than that, we want to avoid the bridging tones or values. We want to use only the values that are like that are actually either light or dark, and we want to leave some space in between so that they don't blend together, because that's what leaves a better contrast. So I'll take yeah, also a good way to work, like a good workflow I'd recommend is like starting from the background. And also because like the very background is usually not going to have any extremes, so start from the back and build up towards the front. And what that mainly does, aside from giving you an opportunity not to paint over the super detailed stuff you've already done, is you get an opportunity to work from the middle of the value range to the extremes. Now, I suggest leaving white and black, if you're eventually going to add them, leave them for towards the end of the painting. That's a really good idea to do, because once you add them, they like really, especially when you add them close to each other, they blend all the other values. All the other contrast in your painting kind of seems like it's been toned down just by the virtue of you adding the highest contrast, and everything else looks like it's been like volume down compared to what it was. It's a really strange phenomena, but the thing is, we don't see values as absolute, we see them relatively. So even though like we see this part of the bad guy's arm like it's overexposed, meanwhile it's like value of, I don't know, 60 maybe, something like that. So without further ado, let's start doing some painting. And I'm going to skip really I'm mostly going to skip the values between 40 and 50, because I feel like that's where my bridge is in this painting. And then from 60 on, like I'm going to skip 40 to 60 basically, and from 60 on I'm going to have the light parts. Yeah, it goes on like this, like okay. Yeah. Now, while painting, a good idea is to produce as much noise as possible. You know, like there was a studio I worked in where I recommended there wasn't like a lot of money going into a project, so we were thinking about sound effects, and I was like, oh, I can do the sound effects, you know, like chidori or shit like that. Yeah, I realize I sound like I have a sort of a mental illness or something. No pun intended. Yeah, basically I'm talking random shit. But okay, let's. Yeah, I also like to work with this opacity by pen pressure setting, because what it enables me to do is when I use opacity by pen pressure, I like to soften brush tip feel, because that way I get to use more of the range. And just don't be a tough guy about it. I've been hitting the gym and doing some other stuff pretty hard the recent years, and I'm relatively strong, at least for an artist, but that doesn't mean I cannot be subtle with my wrist pressure. Okay, so something like this. Doesn't matter. We're not going really for super precision as far as details go, because we really don't have time for that. And the shapes are going to be off sometimes, but at the very minimum, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the composition down. And the most important thing about the composition of this piece is, well, there's not a single most important thing, but like a few important things to note about the composition of this piece is this guy, the bad guy here, is slightly off center. Now, people are talking about the rule of thirds, yada yada. It's not really the rule of thirds. The thing is, don't put your focus, especially like of this size, right in the middle of the painting, because like then it splits it in two kind of, but rather, you know, place them off center. So this painting is called The Gift. And from looking at it, we'd all assume that the gift is the golden pot here. So, I mean, I really don't have any idea about the backstory of this piece, but the way composition works is this guy's to the left. Now, usually you will feel more identified with the person to the left than to the right. And that's like some sort of a subconscious psychological rules I read about years ago. I don't remember now where I read from. Could have been Arnheim, could have been Feng Zhu, like, I have no idea. But I'll remember, I'll tell you guys a different time. So, left side of the picture, friend, right side of the picture, foe. And it's pretty by the book a type of composition. Also, another thing to note is take a look at the heads of all these guys. Every single orc head, I'll call them orc because I have no idea what they're called. So every single orc head is above this guy's head, and this guy looks subservient, like he's bringing something to them, and he's like, "This is for you." But this guy looks like one. Man, he looks like a trickster. He looks like he's going to destroy them with this gift. This looks like Pandora's box or something. There's like a, you know the scene from Breaking Bad when Walter comes and oh man, I've watched Breaking Bad like ages ago, but he has trouble with some Mexican gang or something, and he comes to their place basically with something that looks like crystal meth, but is actually explosive, and then, you know, basically takes a small chunk of it and throws it to the ground. And when they see the amount of explosion it produces, they're like, "Whoa, we should not fuck with this guy." And this dude looks like he's bringing some similar shit to the game here. But these guys don't have a clue about it. They're so clueless. Look at them. They're like, "We're the boss here. We're the boss. There's nothing you can do about it. Bring us the gift, human." Yeah, it's useful to make these sounds because then you really get into the painting more. Also, you seem like an idiot, but who gives a fuck? I mean, if I wanted people to take me seriously, I wouldn't resort to doing painting for a living. So, what the hell? Okay, basically laying down some. This all looks so abstract at the moment, but never mind. So this guy is definitely going to trick them. I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. But as of now, these guys look like they're in control, and that's represented by their position. So as I've mentioned, all of their heads are above his head, and um, he looks to be like very compliant with this shall I say, distribution of power. He doesn't seem to challenge it. He is acting the part uh, of a lowly commoner amidst high-ranking officers of some sort, and seems to be working for him. Now, as you can see, most of what I've done, like all of what I've done here, is in the dark values. So the lightest value we have here is 35. So we're not stepping into that 40 to 60 territory that I said I wanted to avoid. And yeah, basically the way you do these studies is you have to make an assumption. So before going in, you cannot start painting without having an idea what it is that you want to achieve. We only start painting when we have a hypothesis. So my hypothesis here was the whole dynamic range thing, and the thing where I said like okay, so Greg doesn't use the value, he makes a clear distinction between light and shadow, and the way he does it is basically, the way he does it is by ignoring the values in the middle and placing more emphasis on the shadow than the light, and then the light is going to look overexposed in comparison. So right now, yeah, this is 63. Okay, so this gives us a good range for our values. We're going to take them from here. Now some of these might fall below 60. Yeah, this is 48. This is no bueno. But never mind, even if they fall, like, we can always correct that. The thing is, we just don't want any okay, we don't want those middle values to be, if they appear somewhere like this is 58, but it's like pretty close to 60, and I don't really mind, especially since it's going to be next to a dark place, yada yada. So I'm not really going to get all mathematical about it, but I'm going to have it as a general rule of thumb. Yeah, like so. And guys, really don't mind if we don't manage to produce the exact same level of painting Greg did. I mean, the god honest truth is, if I could paint like Greg, I wouldn't be studying Greg, right? Or maybe I would. Maybe like I could paint the same amount of good, only in different style. But hope that doesn't sound like too much of bullshit. Okay, so this. Okay. Now, realistically, this is going to be less light than. But you see what he does. Even when he wants to fade light in the background, he doesn't really resort to having the forbidden range of values that I've talked about. Rather, what he does to reduce the focus of these background characters is he lowers the surface area of the light. So he gives them less spotlight, so to say, and that's why they appear as background characters. So not necessarily the amount of light as in the value itself, but the space it occupies, and it really produces the same effect. Because if you think about cross-hatching, that's essentially what cross-hatching is. You're placing completely black lines next to or upon completely white paper, and the result it produces is like various shades of gray depending on the ratio between the dark lines and the light paper. So the same principle really works even if you're not drawing, even if you're painting surfaces. It's really the same thing applies here. So but also keep in mind that you don't want like super small light details like reflections super far in the background, because they're going to appear as noise, and you don't want such high frequency detail in the background anyways. So, but these are the heads of these guys. Yeah, so you can see here there's like a couple of these lines right above this guy's head to kind of give us the impression of him being the ultimate bad guy of the picture, which, I mean, in case his 3 heads didn't leave enough of an impression, here's your spikes behind the throne type of shit. Okay, so more here, 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 here. Okay, maybe give us a slight, yeah. Okay, the shape of it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So do we have a clear distinction between values here? The problem with this is the problem with it is that we have to achieve at least some level of precision with our shapes to really get to see what we've done in terms of values. And to achieve a precision level of shapes in a complex piece like this is really time consuming, first off. But that doesn't matter. Time is all we have, and we're studying, so yeah, let's go for it. And what essentially like this approach of beginning to paint, I really love it because it puts shapes on the back burner for a while, and like I'm concentrated only on values, and the insight that gives me into like composition and where he puts his light on an abstract level. Because like if you look at it, you might be thinking, I was thinking for a long time, and this is like what's been holding my art back for so long, is I'd be looking at a piece like this and or looking at a scene like this in my head and trying to paint it, and I was like, what would be a realistic way for light to hit this scene? And the realistic way of light hitting a scene matters to a point, and it really matters. It matters more when it's a predictable scene of lighting. So if you have like some sort of blocky objects, architecture and shit like that, then yeah, because like your brain will be quick to recognize mistakes in a predictable scenario. But like in a scenario that you have where you have 7-headed or 7 heads of monsters and like orc-like beings towering over a human and shit like that, uh, really your brain isn't super quick to recognize mistakes of that nature here. And not only that, but also uh, you're missing out on a lot of things value can do for you. And for him, the priority here is for the way he uses light is he wants you to focus on this guy. And you see how everything, let me do this on a different layer. See how everything flows to here, and like this is basically what everything is leading to this guy. Now, of course, there's some lines on the side to kind of, there's this line here. They kind of counterbalance this so that there's not like a single focal point, because there's other stuff you want to see. Basically, this hand and this hand, this is important because we want to see this guy as well. But when you look at this, the first thing you're seeing is something like this goes to here, and there's like a full swing. So you go from here up, then you look at this guy head for a while, and you notice also this part, but then whoop, your look is guided towards this guy, and like essentially the last thing you see is the gift, or maybe not the last, but like the last focal point, because there's multiple focal points. So the last focal point you'll see is the gift, and that builds mystery as well, because it's like it's not out in the open, it's not in the spotlight, and that's what makes it more low-key and more mysterious. So a lot of great visual storytelling here by Greg, and yeah, I mean, the fact that we're studying dynamic range at the moment doesn't really stop us from noticing all the other cool stuff that this guy is doing, and we should, by all means. I mean, guys, it's a really fucking amazing age we live in. Imagine being able to see like most of the good paintings that have ever been produced. Even if it's only on your screen, but come on, what the hell? We're not going to be babies about it, because like if you lived with the masters of old, like during the Renaissance or some of the other historical periods, like up until 50, no, actually up until books were a thing where you could see art, but like until very recently you would have to travel to a place in order to see a piece of art. And imagine how hard that must have been on the artist, because like as an artist you really want to you want to have experiences outside of your like daily routine and everything, but ultimately you want to settle down, buckle up, and have like at least a month or a few months where at a time where you concentrate on a nothing but creating. And if you don't, your art is going to suffer. You need time to, at least I do, time to indulge in my creations. And imagine having to travel everywhere to see what other people are doing. Like this way you can see what people are doing without really getting off your chair. And some of these people are really good, like Greg. Now, as I've mentioned, we by all means don't, no need to be super precise with it. Just like get the general feel of this creature guy. Excuse me. That must have been pretty loud. Yeah. And I'm not even going to edit these because the idea here is really that I want to be able to publish them daily, and I wouldn't be able to do this, at least not at this point, if there was too much editing going on, because like um, as it is now, editing is not my strongest part of the whole process. I can talk you through the studies, no problem, but like editing videos is something I'm fairly new to, and I assume that as we go on, the quality of the video will get better, but for now, it is what it is, and deal with it. No, just kidding. Like, I'm sorry if there's like a lot of background noise or a lot of, I don't know, uh, a lot of times where I don't say anything super important for a couple of minutes. Yeah, so basically but I think there's this type of video has like a great value to effort ratio, if that makes sense. So I can give you guys a lot of great value, at least some of you, uh, without having to go through the whole process. But if you've been with me thus far, give the video a like, thumbs up, and maybe even subscribe, because we're going to be doing these studies, well, at least 3 times a week for now, but really the idea with them is to go daily, because this is something I do daily. I just the way I do them is I have a hypothesis, like such as what I told you about the dynamic range and the whole thing we've been talking about so far. So there's a hypothesis, and then I test the hypothesis. Like I study the paintings, I copy them at a certain point, but like having the hypothesis in mind, not just copying, because we've already mentioned it's stupid. And so then we test the hypothesis, and at the end, like the real test is trying to create your own piece, using the same rules. So I'm not sure if I want to film that part just yet. I might, but we'll see how it goes. Never mind. For now, let's just study Greg. Okay. Yeah. Also, there's another cool trick I forgot to mention, and this is why it's really useful to stick to these to the end. Uh, I mean, the ideal way to watch this kind of a video is to play it on your second screen while you're drawing something on your first screen, and perhaps even studying the same painting, and then we just kind of hang around. Like once I reach a certain amount of subscribers, I'll do these live. This is like the real intention behind them, is to I want them to be live, and then we can talk in the chat about we can talk in the chat about what we're doing. You can tell me what you're having trouble with, or even what you think I'm having trouble with, and we can, work it out, and hopefully we can all get better together. So I'm not like this big art guru or something. Think of me as senpai more than a sensei. Not really here to teach you. I'm here to get better with you. And I'm forever the student of the discipline. I'm a teacher too, but the role of a student is something I will never give up on. Because once you do, you die. Like really, as an artist, once you reject development, that's your artistic death. Some subtle differences here. Now, what will really make this painting pop, or pop? What will really make it come to life, at least somewhat, is defining this guy to the right much better. Yes. First, we need to put this guy in his place at least a little bit, and then we have this, and then there's our guy here. Okay, there's our guy. Look, this is great. Now, I'd expect like a sort of a stronger shadow beneath the chin of this guy. But what he actually does is he just he does it with light. He indicates like the chin of this guy mostly with light. I mean, there's a subtle shadow going on around here. It's even more subtle than what I've done. It's like this subtle. You might not even be able to see it. We definitely wouldn't be able to see it if we weren't looking this closely. Now this is the part where he's actually getting that bridge values, but like only this line between, it's a very thin line between light and dark on this character that has this treatment, if you will. There's a larger surface here. Okay, like this. Okay, okay, okay. I need to see more. Okay. This needs to be higher. Would really be easier to do this with a drawing, But never mind, I call this the true painter's approach. Like, we don't even care about drawing, we're like only painting, only. Yeah, here's basically what it is. And then there's some skulls down there. And the skulls really, they're a focal point of their own, because we're drawn to human faces, and the skulls are really no different than faces in that regard. Whenever we see eyes or something like that, we tend to look at them pretty hard. Yeah, there's like, let's add these really strong highlights here, just to kind of see if we're on the track. Now, what do you guys think? Is this like, are we onto something as far as the as far as the values go? I think we're doing pretty well here, but the biggest thing now is we want to push these two guys into the foreground a bit more. So might be a good idea to darken this guy up like so. Yeah, this really did it. Yeah, so essentially I think that our hypothesis works pretty well. Now, I want to push the foreground guys more into the foreground, and you see this is like the value of 58, so it's pretty close to 60. So it's what I wanted, but since this guy is more in the foreground, I really want him to have like a value closer to 70. So no reason for him to be dark. So we're going to try to push some of his highlights further into the light, maybe even further than 70. Maybe give him closer to 80, like so. And you see the highlight that was popping too much is now starting to feel like on a volume down. And man, it would be so nice to be able to go in and paint all these skulls and stuff. I really feel drawn to it, but unfortunately we don't have time for this. We're only here to study values and to see if we can make a clear distinction between light and dark by skipping what we called the bridge values. Now, you can place the bridge values much lower. We place them between 40 and 60 on value range in this painting. But remember, if we were doing like a high key, more in light situation that didn't have like the overexposed feel, so where the light parts weren't uh, like super burnt, but we had the black parts that were like underexposed. We would place our we would place our bridge values, or the values that we're going to be missing in our paintings, somewhere between say 20 and 40, and then we would push all our shadows, and we would get like a kind of a comic booky feel, more so. I love that aesthetic of like clear dynamic range. That makes a lot of sense to do. So even though I think we've proven our hypothesis as it is, and I mean, guys, this does look like crap. I'm not here to tell you otherwise, but that's the whole thing. You do these studies not to produce a finished masterpiece, but just to download the principles off of some of your favorite artists. And like for my own use, I might even stop at this point, and I'd be like, okay, I've proven my hypothesis, time to move on. So I'd rather do like 5 of these than do a super detailed one where I don't have a concept of what I want to do for a long time. But this time, like, I'm super hungry at the moment, so I'm gonna go grab a bite, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll push this one a little bit further, just for the sake of having a bit more detail, and just kind of checking out if this is definitely the right direction we're headed in. So I really want to be super certain that we're good with this one, and that we're like on the right track. I think we are, but let's give it a nudge and see if we got it right. Okay. Okay, so back from having my breakfast, and having not looked at the painting for an hour or so, I see some mistakes that we can go right in and start correcting right now. And that's another important point I wanted to make here is, if you guys are how should I put this? Yeah, basically it's next to impossible to finish a quality art piece in one sitting, even if that sitting takes, you know, like 17 hours or so, and even if realistically you can finish a painting within the 17-hour mark, it's much better to have it like be 15 hours and then do some other stuff during the not painting 2 hours. And the reason for that is your eyes need some time to reset. And also that's why you see all the artists flipping their canvases, because if you look at one thing for too long a period of time, you kind of, some mistakes get ingrained into your retina or something, and you basically stop seeing stuff the way you normally do, and that inhibits your Sharingan, your ability to perceive your own mistakes, and that hurts your artistic performance. So you want to make breaks. Of course, you want to spend more time painting than doing breaks, and you want to avoid breaks such as, you know, like checking your phone every 5 minutes or so, because you want your breaks, they do not necessarily have to be short, but what they have to be is concentrated. You you don't want your breaks to be like spread out. You want a decent chunks of indulgence in your painting. Like you want to have a few hours where you're not thinking about anything but the painting you're doing. But also you want to have dedicated time spent away from the painting while you're working on a painting, as this helps your visual system reset basically. And when you do that, it's much easier then to spot some of the stupid things you've done and go right in and correct those. So yeah, I've adjusted a couple of values here. This arm can be even lighter. I mean, I can push it like really a lot more into the light range, like so. This guy here is like okay, like this. Yeah. So okay. This, we're trying to add some of the details just so that we can see the general shape of our guy better and get an understanding of where we're headed with this painting. Now, when you're doing value studies of a colored piece, the tricky part is basically when you're looking at the value painting, there's something that like psychologists of art and like Arnheim is like the leading scientist in this area. I've read quite a few essays and books by this guy, and there's a thing he called visual weight, and visual weight is basically how much something draws your attention to itself. And so like contrast is visually heavy, as contrasty spot draw attention to themselves. Also large shapes are visually heavy, but also small detail next to each other is visually heavy. So there's like a bunch of things, and most of it is, yeah, and also human faces, or faces in general, especially the eyes, are super visually heavy, because as creatures we're basically primed to ping off of social of other people, you know, to see the social context we're in, if we're in trouble or if we have like a potential good thing going on. All of this, or most of this, can be seen in the eyes of the people around us. So that's where we tend to focus a lot of our attention. So, but the thing with this is when you're doing value studies of a colored piece, very highly saturated parts of the painting, such as the bottom of this pot here, you see this bright orange, or even the red robes of the main monster guy. So all of those, how shall I say, okay, so all of these highly saturated parts, what they do is they are visually heavy, and it's hard for you to really it's hard for you to distinguish which part of the visual heaviness comes from the value itself versus what comes from the color or the saturation attached to it. So what I mean is, even though the red stuff, the red robes and his skin might be similar in value, you're always going to perceive the robes as visually heavier because it's a more impactful color. And this can kind of fuck up your perception of value. So just be aware of that. I mean, really, we will be studying this in more detail as a separate theme later on. But for now, just have it in your mind that a potential area to make mistakes is the part where you have where you basically have, you know, highly saturated colors against very dim colors, and then trying to figure out the value ratio between the two. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, maybe have some detail for this guy here so that he doesn't look like a blob. Just maybe. Like so, like so. But more subtle. Yeah, it's always a question of subtlety. So, I think if you look at these two together, I think we've done a pretty decent job of figuring out the values between the two. The composition works, yeah, I would say I'm like pleased with the outcome. Now to add a bit more impact to the whole painting, what we can do is basically have some lines here for the stairs. I'd have these on separate layers and then reveal only parts of them or something like that, because they're a straight line, so it's easier to handle those things in such a way. But mostly, yeah, whenever you have straight lines like these, they tend to represent space way easier. You know, they're like they ground everything together. And we have some lines here. Maybe give this pot a more elaborate shape, like so. Yeah, I think I mean, this is obviously not a finished painting, but for what it is, a study, this is as far as you need to go. We've proven our hypothesis, and well, of course, sometimes we will be dealing with shapes in more elaborate studies, but this is all I can really manage in an hour or so of painting. So yeah, I think it looks great for what it is, and I'll wrap it up in a minute. I just you know, when I get to this stage, it's really hard for me to let go, because like I'm starting to see how good it can be, but a good way to tell yourself away from mindlessly continuing to paint is like, dude, look, even if I finish this to a very cool level, it's still Greg's painting. So yeah, I didn't make anything too cool there, so might as well save the conclusions and work on a piece of my own next time. So this is really as far as you ever need to go on your studies of this nature, and we'll wrap it up here. Um, I have a few concepts that I haven't really covered as far as values go. I I know I've been talking a lot, but there's really a lot to go through, and values, in my opinion, are like the cornerstone of any good painting, and they should be really, really thoroughly studied. So, um, we'll make sure to study them in more depth as we go on, and but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. How do you like this format? This is something that I will at some point be able to, and like very soon, be able to produce on a daily basis. However, if it turns out that this format isn't polished enough, perhaps I'll do a more prepared kind of a study where I know in advance the kind of things I'm going to be talking about, and mark down some key points I want to make, etc., so that we have like a more systematic approach to our studies. And if that's something you'd like to see, please let me know. I'd be happy to make those. It's just that they take more time to produce and to edit, and editing is, as I said, not my strongest suit at the moment. So we'll see. But if anyone watched this through to the end, I'm super curious to hear any feedback you might have, and I'll definitely take it into consideration. And I'll see you guys next time, and we can study some more, and I'll definitely reveal a lot more knowledge to every one of you and to myself. And I promise you guys, we're going to rip apart these greats. Like, we're going to rip apart Greg. We're going to rip apart some of the old masters. Some of the painters of the 19th century is like is really full of great examples for people that want to study digital art in kind of a realistic way for the purposes of working in video games or movies. And there's a lot of not very well known by the general public artists there. And I'm making a collection of the names in my notes as we speak. And I have a list of all the artists that I want to study. And I'll take you along with me on the journey, and we'll see like all the great stuff these guys do. And hopefully we'll be by this time next year, if you stick through with me, we'll be able, like all of us, will be able to paint 5 times better. We'll be able to do shit we've never even imagined possible. So just hang in tight and use your brain, not just your heart. I know people say that like art is, a thing of soul and shit like that. Yeah, sure, man, but like brain is the best tool you have, so use it. Use it or lose it. Yeah, that's it, guys. Pavle signing off. Stay true to the path, and I'll see you guys down the line. Bye.